Good morning. I'm Ann Katzef of Ask Design. Today's tutorial is about pre-flighting and packaging your InDesign file. Sooner or later, you will discover that emailing your InDesign file to another person is not quite enough. Assuming they have the software, they may be able to open that file, but they won't be able to do much else. There are fonts and images associated with the file, and you also have to send those. So I'm going to walk you through all the lovely pre-flighting issues that may come up. And once you do all that, take care of all those issues, packaging the file will be a piece of cake. So hold on and we'll get you started right now. InDesign has two great tools that work in tandem with each other: the Preflight Panel and the Package tool. The Preflight Panel alerts you about any prepress issues in the file, and if you forget to look at that panel, the Package tool will remind you about those problems and prompt you to fix them. The Package tool collects copies of everything into one folder. That includes the InDesign file itself, along with its linked graphics and the fonts that you're using. You can send that folder to whoever needs it, and they'll be able to view, edit, and or print the InDesign file. The Preflight Panel. Before the actual packaging, it's good to check the Preflight Panel and fix any errors that may exist in the file. I've got about 5 main errors that I've identified as the most common prepress problems that occur, and the Preflight Panel will help you identify them and resolve them. So let's take a peek. One of the most common problems that arises is that the image links are missing. So let's look at where the Preflight Panel exists and what it tells you. It's right at the bottom of your document window. Right here, I've built in 2 errors to our document to show you how to resolve them. If you click on this little arrow, you expose this drop-out menu, and we'll go to the Preflight Panel. Pops up here. I'm going to scoot it right next to this other panel here. Now it's telling me I have 2 errors and they're links. Let's expose this a little bit more and see what the issues are. If you click on the first item, it tells you in the bottom section of the panel that the problem is the linked file is missing. The fix is that you go to the links panel and use the relink button to find the linked file. And it's the same issue with this other image. So let's go to the links panel. Got the pages panel, layers, links. Okay. The other thing that happens, you get this red alert, a question mark inside a red circle, and we click on one. This is the image in question. And what's happening is that if you look in the link info in the bottom part of the panel, it says the status is missing. So we need to relink that image. Now, this can happen because of a couple things. One, perhaps you copied and pasted the image into the InDesign file, so there's no link to the image. So you should always place your images, never just copy and paste, always place. The second possible reason that this occurs is that the original link may have been in one folder, and in the process of life, you may have moved it somewhere. So now InDesign is saying, hold on, I don't know where this image is anymore. So we're going to relink it. I've selected this image 10005, and I'm going to hit the relink button. Let's do it. Takes you to this window. We're going to find that folder, and and 10005 is right here. All right, it took care of that. Let's take care of the next one. Relink, navigate to that folder. Whoops, wrong one. It's in the 2011. And what's the number? 1103. Right here, 1103. Easy. And now it says the status is okay. Let's save the file. Now, another sweet thing you can do with the Preflight panel is, you see it says no errors now, you can define your own profile. So let's go in there. I've already defined one. You click this plus sign and you start defining it. Let's take a peek at that. Because I like to alert myself about any color issues. So I've selected color space and modes that are not allowed. RGB, spot color, and lab I've included in this particular CMYK profile. So I'm going to click OK because that exists. And then in the Preflight panel, you can change your profile. Now what happens? Let's see. Oh, I have two more errors because these files are RGB. So I have to go back and fix that. And this is the way I do it. I'm going to navigate to my desktop and find those two images. I think they're 10005 and 1103. So I duplicate them, Command D, creates a copy, and I'm going to rename the copy with the same name, but add -CMYK. I'll do the same thing to 1103. Command D, duplicate it, creates a copy, rename it, the same name, -CMYK. Can't type very well today. Okay, so now I've got the correct name, but I actually have to change them to CMYK. So I'll open them up in Photoshop. Okay, so now I've got them open in Photoshop. Here's 10005 CMYK. However, it tells me right here it's still RGB. So we'll go to the image menu, scroll down to mode. You can see here it's RGB. Change it to CMYK. It'll warn you about the swap setting. You just ignore that, click OK, and be sure to save. Let's go to the next file, 1103. We'll do the same thing. Check the image menu, scroll to mode, change to CMYK. It may ask you, do you want to flatten it? Sure, we'll flatten it. That makes the file a little smaller. And save. Okay, so now we're back in the InDesign file, and one really quick way to swap the RGB with the CMYK image is to relink them. So let's click on 10005, the relink button, find the correct folder, 10005. There it is, the new file with the CMYK in the name. And because there was only a mode change, there was no size change, the swap will be seamless. Let's go to 1103, relink that, find the correct folder, and CMYK. Okay, there's the RGB right underneath it. Okay. And now in the Preflight panel, are those errors gone? Yep, they're gone now. All solved. Okay, so let's close up the Preflight panel for a sec. Now there are other issues that can come up when you're pre-flighting that may not necessarily show up in the Preflight panel. Say that 10 times, Preflight panel. But these are things that through experience you'll find that you remember about them. So the next problem area is that some of the images may have low resolution, and you can find out again by going to your links panel. There's all this wonderful information in the bottom portion of the panel, and it tells you about the PPI. So what you're looking for is 300. Image print resolution should be optimally 300. And usually printers will allow a 10 to 20% range above and below the 300 PPI to ensure quality results. Now, the fix: increasing the resolution in a low resolution image will not solve the problem. That will result in a poor quality image. Replace the low resolution image with a high resolution one. That's the fix. The fourth most common prepress issue is that the image formats are not print ready. Acceptable print formats are TIFF, EPS, and PDF. Sometimes a high-res JPEG may be sufficient, but unless you know what you're doing, I recommend not using a JPEG because even though it may be high resolution, it is a compressed format. So the warning signs would be anything in a PNG, GIF, or JPEG format needs to be swapped out or saved as a TIFF, EPS, or PDF. Now, how do you do that? I often open the PNG in Photoshop and do a save as a TIFF or EPS or PDF. The final and the fifth and final most common prepress issue has to do with fonts. Font formats that are true type are usually not appropriate for print. And again, it's a good idea to check with the print vendor about this issue. Generally, it's better to use OpenType and PostScript fonts. OpenType are cross-platform. You can use them on both the web and print, and PostScript is the original for print format, and it's still viable. TrueType was initially created for the web, but some vendors do accept it, so check with your vendor. The best way to solve the TrueType issue is perhaps you want to, here's like, okay, I know that's TrueType just because I created this file, but you want to go to your type menu, drop down to find font, and this is the curls right here. Now I could swap that out with Minion Pro. I would just change all and then I'd be done. Or alternatively, you can select that type if it's just a headline like it is here, and go again to the type menu and drop down to create outlines. Okay, that solves the problem right then and there. As a precaution, I'll do a Command Z for a sec. I often copy it to my pasteboard, so I know I'll have that font somewhere in the file in case I need to edit it, and then I'll go back, type menu, create outlines, and then save it. Okay. So when you're finished, with the Preflight panel and solving those prepress issues, packaging the InDesign file will be a breeze. Let's take you through the steps. The first step is, of course, save the file. The next step, go to the File menu, drop down to Package. You'll get this window. Gives you a summary of what's going on. I like to double check everything here. The fonts, I even have some true type left in there. So I might have to go back and fix that either by converting them to outline or swapping them out. I know with the curls, I did save it to the pasteboard. So that won't be an issue because it's on the pasteboard, it's not actually printing. But with DIN, I would have to go back and solve that problem before I package it. But let's move on to links and images. All of them are now CMYK and good formats. Colors and inks, CMYK. Now the print settings you can pretty much ignore. Those will change anyway, depending on what the computer is hooked up to locally. And then finally, the external plugins. So I don't have any external plugins with this file, but sometimes you might. A really common one I used to use for books was a mathematical formula type of plugin. So you have to make sure whatever external plugins you use, the recipient of these files also has those plugins. So once you're good with all of this, everything looks good, click this package button again. Let me swing it over here. Here's another package button. And fill out this form. It's good to know who you are in case the printer needs to contact you, your phone number and all that, and any special instructions. Click Continue. Now it's going to rename the folder that you put this in. I have a particular naming convention where I keep the name of the file and then I add a hyphen and then OFCP, which means out for final combined proof. That probably means nothing to you, but to me it's a signal that these are the final files. So whatever works for you, stick with that naming convention, be consistent, because in a year or 10 years, you want to be able to look at that name and realize, oh, that's, the final set of files that I sent to the print vendor. All of these, I think, are pre-selected, but double check. You want to, of course, copy the fonts, the linked graphics, update the graphic links in the package, and I also like to include the IDML and the PDF. The IDML is an earlier version of the InDesign file in case the recipient doesn't have the most current version or your version of InDesign. They will be able to open the IDML file. So once you double check this and you've renamed your folder, where are you going to put it? Where's the destination? So some folks like to put it right in a folder where they need it. I like to put it on the desktop because then I can move it anywhere I want. So that's what we're doing here. It's on the desktop. And guess what? Another package button. Let's click it. It warns you about the fonts. Everything's fine with that. It's all about licensing and owning the fonts, which I do, and the print vendor will too. Okay, once the packaging is done doing its thing, you want to find the folder. It's sitting here on my desktop. Let's open it up and make sure it has everything in there that should be there. So it's got the InDesign file, good. IDML, PDF, and look at this. It collects copies of all the fonts you used in that file into a document fonts folder. And it also places copies of the images in a links folder. And remember what I said about links, all the images should be placed into the InDesign file to maintain their links. Pretty sweet. Now, the final step, which I like to do, is compress the folder. Sometimes it's just too large to send as a folder, so you need to compress it. I think if I right-click on this, I get to compress it. Let's zip that thing up. I also have Stuff It. I could do it that way, but this is a nice keyboard shortcut, and it will compress it. You can send that compressed zip archive to the recipient through email maybe, or a Dropbox, upload it to a Google Drive, or use their FTP server. There are a number of ways to do it, so find out which way will work for that particular person, and you are all set. I hope this tutorial was useful to you. If you have any questions, please ask, and any comments, please leave those comments. I welcome your feedback, and have a great day. This is Ann Katzeff of Ask Design, signing off.